Let's do this. The Cult of Hockey podcast by the faithful and for the faithful. I'm David Staples of the Edmonton Journal, and I'm here today, live, taped at the Edmonton Journal with Bruce McCurdy. Welcome, Bruce.
With David Staples, yeah. We're not in two separate offices talking across the whole city at one another. So we're totally out of our element here, but...
We would be...
at least I am. This is your business office.
Yeah, so. Not here. We would be in different places, you in St. Albert and me in South Edmonton, but Google has screwed us by getting rid of Google Hangouts. Good work, Google, you big stupid company. We are not happy about that, so we have to figure out a way to podcast remotely. If anyone has any suggestions on how we can talk to each other and make a remote podcast, which involves one simple step like Google Hangouts used to do, which we were actually quite thankful for.
Yeah,
get in touch with us. You can email me at dstaples@postmedia.com, and that'd be a big favor. Talking about, we're doing our prospect series. We've been going through the prospect groups, and we're going to talk about, today we're going to be talking about we're in the top 20, and we're going to be talking about the forwards who are in the top 20. And Bruce, of the top 20, how many of the Oilers' top 20 prospects, out of the elite group of Cult of Hockey voters, how many did we pick as forwards?
We picked exactly 7 out of 20 that are forwards, two would-be centers that might also play wing, and 5 wingers, compared to 10 defensemen and 3 goalies. So it's kind of a imbalancing, especially when you consider 21 and 22 are also goalies. So really just 7 out of the top 22 are forwards compared to 5 goalies and 10 defensemen. So I guess that explains why Ken Holland had to pick a defenseman in the first round this year, because clearly, 9 good defense prospects wasn't quite enough.
Apparently there were no good forwards at the top of the draft this year.
That's
what everyone was saying, right?
Yeah, that's what I heard too.
All those. Now, of course, we're giving Holland a hard time, but who knows? And we know historically that picks in the range that the Oilers drafted in are coin flips. They got about 50% chance of being good to great players, and they have 50% chance of beating mediocre to duds. So maybe the Oilers got it right, and if Broberg turns out to be a great player, all is forgiven. If he's a dud, heads will roll.
I remember asking, who the hell is this Paul Coffey guy? I think it was Darren Veach I wanted, or who was the guy? Rick Lanz at Vancouver took that draft. And who's Paul Coffey? Kitchener Rangers? I don't know this guy. Anyway, we found out about him, didn't we?
Yeah. You usually never go wrong taking a player out of the OHL in the top 10 picks, except the Oilers sometimes do. Sam Gagner. All right. Let's talk about, the first one we're going to talk about is Jolton Joe Gambardella. Where have you gone? Where's he going?
Joe Gambardella? Well, he's right on the cusp, he's a tweener. And in fact, he finished last year with a 15-game stretch in Edmonton. And then when their season ended, then of course he went down to Bakersfield, where he had an excellent playoff campaign. If I'm not mistaken, led the team in goals and points with 6 and 10 respectively. And his time in the NHL, he had some very good moments, and he had some other moments where he looked like a bottom sixer on a bottom 6 NHL team. But he's a player, 25 years old, a mature player who became a free agent, had his contract expired in June, and Ken Holland went and he re-signed the major sort of more veteran line in Bakersfield of Gambardella with Brad Malone and Patrick Russell, and basically brought back another entire layer of competition that the younger players, that some of whom we're going to be talking about, will have to climb over to get into the NHL.
Yeah, Joe Gambardella picked a hell of a night to have his best night in hockey. He had a 5-point night, I think, a hat trick and 2 goals in a key playoff game against San Diego when Ken Holland was first hired, and I think it might have been Ken Holland's first game watching the Oilers team, Oilers pro team. So, but you know what, Joe, I really liked Joe Gambardella's game in the playoffs. And every time I've seen him, including when he was with the Oilers, he really hustles, he battles, he hits. He has a good head for the game. He doesn't make a lot of mental mistakes. He's a solid defensive player. He's limited by he's not that big, he's not that fast. So those are fairly major limitations.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah.
But he's got a decent level of skill. Every level that Joe Gambardella has played at, he's been kind of pretty weak for a year, mediocre for a year, and then he has in his second year become a pretty good player, and that's held true, I think, in the USHL, if that's where he was, in junior, in college, and with Bakersfield. So I think this he just strikes me, Bruce, as one of these guys, a Pisani-like player. And there's a number of Pisani. That whole line was almost, except for Malone. Like both Russell and Gambardella have that quality. I personally like Gambardella more than Russell. I think he's just has slightly better hockey sense and a slightly better work ethic than Russell. But that line was Bakersfield by far their best line in the playoffs.
Yes, it was.
That line would have served the Oilers well probably last year as their fourth line, it turns out, because all hungry players in their 20s, ready to give her snot and play some hockey in a role where you're providing energy to the team. So I think he's got a chance, Bruce. Although let's look at the roster here.
But he's a mature prospect. That's what these guys are. They're ready to roll. It's not like they're 4 years away. They're in position to help the big team now. And in fact, all those guys did play a bunch of games in Edmonton last year. All three guys on that line, and the guys who can kill penalties. Not that the Oilers need any decent penalty killers or anything.
They got to get Cassian off the penalty kill. I hope that's the first thing that Dave Tippett does is, we've had terrible penalty killing 3 years in a row. Zach Cassian has been a key part of that. So, Bruce, their depth, who do they got? Why don't you go down the list on the left wing?
Oh, left wing, yeah. Well, we got Leon Draisaitl. I think he's secure as the number one left winger, seeing as how he scored about 80% of the goals from the left side last year. James Neal, of course, moves into Milan Lucic's roster spot, and maybe
That's
a little further
slow,
up.
overpaid guy niche.
Yeah, a little further up the depth chart, I would say second line for Neal, and I don't know that Lucic was there anymore.
We know that he
they
was
brought
not,
in
yeah.
Michael Granlund, experienced NHLer Michael Granlund, to play bottom six. Marcus Granlund, my bad. Michael's the good one. Marcus Granlund. to kill penalties and play on the third line. Swedish veteran Joakim Nygård on the fourth line. And then they have AHL veteran Joe Gambardella on the fifth line. And then beyond that, that's when you're getting into, this is the kind of competition that Tyler Benson, a very excellent prospect, has to beat out to win a spot in the NHL. And my thinking is Benson can do that when he's ready, but until he's ready, he's not going to be forced into the Oilers team because they got no one else. I mean, they have a number of guys that are qualified bottom sixers at least.
The good news is, if, let's say, James Neal, like I take it as about a coin flip that Neal turns out. If Neal doesn't turn out, they can send him to the minors. It's not like Milan Lucic where you have to have him on your NHL team.
Right.
They could send him to the minors this year and call up Gambardella or Tyler Benson. And he's not going to hold, like Lucic was going to hold those guys back.
No matter what.
It was just the definition of his contract. But Benson and Gambardella and Josh Curry and Thomas Yurko are all in the running for an NHL job. I think they'll probably go with 5 left wingers, although they've kind of got 5 right wingers there too, don't they? But anyway, there's a chance that Gambardella could make it as the extra forward because he can play center. He's a utility player, and he's also 25. He doesn't need to spend any more time in Bakersfield. So, an interesting player and someone who might surprise everybody and carve out an NHL career for 3 or 4 years. And
very strong player on the forecheck. That's his game. He's just all over that puck.
Relentless.
And
I love that in him. All right, let's go next, Bruce, to Kirill Maksimov. All right.
All right.
Kirill the Thrill. He is a Russian player drafted in the 5th round of the 2017 draft. And the interesting thing about him is every year he's had an appreciable increase in his goal scoring. Mm-hmm. It looked like this year early on that he was just going to explode at the OHL level and become like a 50-goal man down there and maybe get close to 100 points. He kind of leveled off. I think he might have got hurt. I'm not exactly sure.
He did get hurt late in the year, and it ruined his playoffs.
He knocked out of the playoffs. But he had essentially the same kind of season as he had the year before. But those are both very good seasons. Yes. He had 40 goals, 79 points in 63 games. He's a shooter, Bruce, and good with the puck. What do you think of?
118 pins too, so he's no shrinking violet, judging from that.
That's nice.
Yeah, I don't mind it.
What do you think of him?
And a huge plus player on a very good team. My understanding is that his role changed a little bit this past year in Niagara, that he wound up anchoring his second line as opposed to being on the top line, and he did a little bit more penalty killing, and they tried to round out his game a little bit more, which in the long term for developing the prospect is the kind of stuff you want to hear, even if you're saying, well, he just held fast at 80 points. He didn't show any improvement. If you're holding fast at 80 points while your role is changing to a more well-rounded one, well, then you're improving. And I think this is a forward with a long-term chance. He's turning pro now, and we can fully expect him to spend at least an entire one full year in Bakersfield, and probably two.
Oh yeah, he's a shooter. Mm-hmm. And Alan Mitchell Lowtie did an interesting piece at The Athletic recently on Maksimov, where he was comparing people who in the OHL who had similar kind of scoring years as 19-year-olds to Maksimov. And the news wasn't surprising. It's kind of really iffy, like whether he's going to make it or not. Like some of these players really turn out, and some of them really don't turn out. And Maksimov was more in the group of players who tend not to turn out. But again, like these are kind of group studies, and we all rate players this way. I do this kind of stuff all the time because it's useful. It's interesting to know the general odds of this kind of player, but every player is an individual, and it often comes down to things we don't know about work ethic and intangibles, and we don't know these things about Maksimov. We do know that when he came to training camp last year, he didn't play very well. After shining in the training camp the previous year, last year it was kind of a disappointment. We were all expecting really great things, and he was kind of faded into the woodwork rather quickly. I think it sounds like Tippett's going to go with a rather quick training camp. I don't expect to see a lot of Maksimov at our training camp this year, but I do. The whole key for him is going to be he's got to get on one of the top two lines in Bakersfield. And let's just go look at our handy-dandy depth chart. And that's so.
Easier said than done when you're bringing back the whole top six from last year, right?
So Patrick Russell and Yamamoto were there. So if those guys are there, he's third line, and he's not on the power play because Yamamoto's on the power play spot, most probably, although the Yamamoto can play the other side too.
Yeah, well, I think Maksimov himself, he's a right shot, but he likes to play left side. So that
on
is
the power play?
Or at even strength.
But not on the power play.
So that's, probably if he's a right shot, he probably does like
Oh, excuse me, you're right.
Side.
Yeah, excuse me. See, he's not a left wing, though, he's a right wing.
When they drafted him, he was listed as a right shooting left wing.
Oh.
But anyway, he was. I didn't see him play last year to know exactly how he was being deployed, but other than winger, which is. But I think he's capable of both, and he's one of those pure shooters. He's got a great release, and those guys tend to like playing on their off wing where they get the forehand into the middle of the ice. The puck gets to them a little quicker, and they can a little better angle for the quick release.
See, this is a situation where, with a player like Patrick Russell or Josh Curry, if they don't make the Oilers this year, it's almost like the coach has got to make a decision in Bakersfield. Do I continue to play Patrick Russell and Josh Curry in leading roles, or is it time to say no? I'm going to go with Ryan McLeod, and I'm going to give an opportunity to Kirill Maksimov, and I think. This is a real test for Woodcroft.
Yep.
He can't, I don't think, if Patrick Russell doesn't make the Oilers this year, He doesn't need to play top minutes in Bakersfield just to stay healthy and like it for in a call-up situation to be ready to go for the Oilers in case they need someone. He could play on the third line and penalty kill and be ready to go. But Maksimov needs, I think, that second line treatment, and so he's going to have to earn it. But the coach also has to give opportunity, and they don't always do that. Like they use the excuse he didn't earn it, but sometimes an excuse like I just want to win. And this is always the struggle for the HL level coach.
As a rookie pro, I would set the bar a little bit lower. I want him to be a regular on the team. I want him in the top 9. He's probably going to be down there 2 years. If he's not on the top 6 by the second year, then there's trouble. But there's going to be a little feeling out period for him, and it wouldn't surprise me that he starts off in a lesser role, and works his way up from there. Because I mean, he and McLeod and some of these other fellows will all be getting their feet wet as professionals, and so that's a big transition.
It's a fair comment, Bruce. If he's in the top 9, that would probably be like if he gets like 30 points as a top 9 forward.
I'd like to see him on the power
that
play,
wouldn't.
But
that might be an okay. What I'm talking about, if he's going to be an NHLer, like if he's marked to be an NHLer, yeah, he can make the third line and he can still make the NHL by having a good second year in the HL.
Right.
But if he's going to break through and be a real sign would be that he plays in the top 6 and he succeeds there. So maybe he can force his way into that role.
Well, if he's good enough and he does force the issue, then that's great. Obviously, that's the best news possible. But he's I just not going to set the initial expectations of top 6 or bust. That's all. Like it's sometimes these guys need a year or part of a year to adjust and find their way, and the fact there's competition at the Bakersfield level is crucial. And I guess part of the issue is, well, some of the top 6 guys in Bakersfield force their way onto the Oilers, because if they do that, then that opens up opportunities. And ultimately, what we'd like to see in the organization is what Chiarelli used to call churn, where you move, you have upwards movement. You have guys graduating from the minors to the big league team, and guys on the big league team graduating from the bottom 6 to the top 6, and newcomers moving into the roles on the minor league team that wasn't there before. One of the really remarkable issues about our prospects list this year is that last year's top 10 prospects are all still prospects. Not one of them has graduated to the NHL. Not one of them has left the organization. So there's this logjam where the new guys are now added to this other list of prospects, and not just the new draft choices, but there's some pretty key guys turning pro, of which Maksimov is one, McLeod is one, and of course on the back end, Samorkov and Bouchard are turning pro. There's got to be some upward movement from other players in those positions to open up a couple doors for these guys.
Yeah, the guy in the bubble for me in Bakersfield would be Josh Curry, who I see as probably of the veteran guys. He looked okay in moments in Edmonton, but didn't have a great playoff in Bakersfield, and he's 27 in October.
Right.
Pretty clear indication that he's probably not an NHLer, and that's someone who might conceivably get first or second line action in Bakersfield. And I would ask, okay, you really better earn it, and you really better be significantly different, because otherwise, why are we doing this? It's just it's why do that? Why play him over Maksimov would be the question that Woodcroft has to be asking himself on a daily basis. Like, he's got to make the right call here, and he's got to think about the future, not just about the present. Let's talk about another Bakersfield player this coming year. It's going to be Ryan McLeod. So he's a big, fast center, taken 40th overall in the 2018 draft. And he's one of those guys, just like Raphael Lavoie, who fell to the Oilers, who like all of the scouting services had ranked about 20 to 25, 20 to 30, just like Lavoie, and fell considerably to the Oilers. Now, it's interesting, the psychology of fans when that happens to me. It's like, yeah, the Oilers scored this great coup, everybody says. But what you're saying when you say that is all of those experts on the NHL teams
passed.
They passed. Like the real experts we're excited because we think the real experts essentially got it wrong, and the amateur experts who do these scouting lists got it right.
Some of them are amateurs and some of them aren't.
Some of them are professionals.
The Mackenzie list is full-fledged
fair enough.
pro scouts.
But it is a little bit of a weird thing to get excited about, is my only point. Like, it doesn't mean necessarily you got this great bargain. What it means is the Oilers have them rated higher than the other professional scouts do, I guess is what it means.
Well, what we have in the case of Ryan McLeod is a big guy, 6'3", 205 already, who can skate like the wind, who can play center and wing, and who scored at the rate of about 1 point per game in his last 2 OHL seasons.
Which isn't great for an OHL.
Well, his draft year was pretty good, although he was at the very old end of his draft class. So he only had 1 year left. And he split that year between Mississauga Steelheads, where he scored 38 points in 32 games. And then he went to Saginaw, a much better team, where he scored just 24 points in 31 games. So his point total dropped down. But his plus-minus went from -12 in Mississauga to +18 in Saginaw, which speaks to team strength. And almost clearly speaks to a change in role, that he was probably given a 2C spot as opposed to one first-line sort of star player duty in his previous role. And his team did well, and he did all right. He just didn't rack up the big points.
They have this 16-year-old kid, Cole Perfidi, as their top-line center, I believe, in Saginaw. So I think he's a second-line center at the OHL level and a two-way player. So what we've seen of him in development camps has been kind of thrilling on a certain level, because, man, that guy can skate. And I think he really impressed Todd McLellan last training camp. He actually earned... He went
deep into camp. He got sent back the same day the Oilers flew overseas. Was the day they sent Ryan McLeod back.
I'm just wondering if he didn't play any. No, that's right, because he went to Europe and he didn't play any
but
NHL games.
Stuck right to the end of training camp. And there was only 5 centers left.
Well, you could see, like, you're thinking, you're Todd McLellan, and you're thinking, okay, we signed this Kyle Brodziak, and you're watching him play, and he is so slow. He is so slow, and you're thinking, I could, as my fourth line center, I can have him, but look at this kid. He is just a force ripping up and down the ice. And that must have been awfully tempting to Todd McLellan to think, maybe that's the right choice. Maybe it would have been the right choice. Who knows? But I think it's obviously, that would have been like promoting a 19-year-old or 20-year-old Anton Lander to your fourth line center. Right. Didn't do Anton Lander any favors. Wouldn't have done McLeod. So again, the Oilers are taking the right, and it's such a relief. The Oilers are taking the right path with McLeod. He's going to be in the AHL for 1 or 2 or 3 years, however long it takes. And maybe by the end of that, they'll have a player who's figured out his role. It's highly unlikely it's going to be as a top line or second line center in the NHL. It's probably going to be as a third line or fourth line checking two-way center who's got a bit of offense and some real speed. And if he can figure that out, especially the defensive side of that game, and become just a total lockdown defensive player in his own zone, always be on the right side of the puck, be completely defensive responsible. If McLeod can figure that out, he's got a chance as an Edmonton Oiler, not this year, but as early as next year.
Yeah, he certainly projects as a 3 or 4 C, or even potentially a winger. But bottom 6, I'd be very surprised to see him wind up as a top 6er in his career. Which is different from saying he's not a useful player. One of the issues the Oilers have had in recent years is that they haven't been developing their own depth players.
Where's the Fernando Persanis? Where's the Sean Horkoffs? Yeah,
they trade him away for magic beans.
Where's the Jason Chimeras and the Jarrett Stolls?
Yeah, where's the Kyle? Wait a minute. They brought him back after 9 years of his career doing good stuff for other teams. But you know what I mean.
We have a table to bang our heads on here.
They developed these guys, Andrew Cogliano and so on, and then and it's just so frustrating. Anyways, they that's something they really need to turn the page on. And if you look at any good team, any contending team, you look at their roster, sure, they always have core players in their top 6, but also in their bottom 6, and throughout the defense that have come up through and played with that team. And they're not always, the $8 million star players that you say, well, that guy is a Boston Bruin or St. Louis Blue through and through, because they've done the whole journey. and they have that team's tattoo on their butt, as the old saying goes. And the Oilers need to have more of that. They've got. I wrote about this extensively last year. How often how the Oilers have no players that they've kept for 10 years after their draft, like none. Nuge and Clefbaum, in 2 years' time, if neither of them gets traded, which is always a big if, will be the first, I think, since Ales Hemsky, who were able to stick around for as many as 10 years out from their draft. And
So,
sure, you can go out and grab these pieces here and there, but you got to have still that pipeline bubbling up from underneath within your own organization, and that includes potential third-line players like Ryan McLeod.
Cooper Marody. He's a favorite of mine. I think he got a lot when people talk I don't think the coach or coaches particularly like Cooper Marody when he came up. There seems to be a kind of a stigma against him, but I kind of liked him when he was with the Oilers. I thought, frick, here's a guy who can make a pass. Like, how many wingers did they have last year who could even make a pass?
No.
It was a small list. So he's 22. He's at the AHL level. He's the Patrick Kane of that team. Like, he dangles with the puck at the AHL level. He's the driver of that line. He was with Tyler Benson and Josh Curry, skittering around the ice in the offensive zone, cycling around the offensive end. More than a point per game in his rookie season in the AHL. Now he's not a 20-year-old rookie. He's a 22-year-old rookie last year. Turned 22. He'll be 23. He's the same age almost exactly as Connor McDavid.
Yeah.
But Bruce, this is a player who has outside top six potential in the NHL on the wing, not as a center. He's a center in the AHL. I don't see him having the speed for that. But on the wing, this guy can make some plays and keep the puck alive. He's got great vision. I like him.
He's really good along the boards. And he won a ton of battles, even in his, I won't say a ton because he didn't get a ton of ice time in Edmonton, but he impressed with his ability to come out of board battles with the puck. And he actually got 3 recalls in his rookie season, which maybe was a bit premature, but he got called up in October, November, and December. And the first call-up, he played a fair bit of wing. The second time, he played a small amount of center, like 5 minutes a game. And the third time, he sat in the press box and never saw the ice. So, it's not like progress was being made from one call-up to the next, but they had him on the top of their recall list. And he showed decently, certainly, for especially in that October recall. He looked very good. And that's when he played the most.
On the right side, like if Neil's on the left side, if Puljujarvi isn't back, they might have a pretty big hole there for an attacking winger. I mean, Archibald, Chiasson, and Cassian. If you have to blink, you have to look, kind of squint pretty hard to see a top line or a second line winger out of those two guys. And Gagner. Well, Gagner's not a first or second line winger, I don't think. And neither is Chiasson.
He's a skill winger, so that's where he's going to try and find a spot. But if Gagner's in the top 6, then...
But Marody, you put Marody with RNH and Neil, like maybe that could work because he can carry the puck and he can make a play. All right, Raphael Lavoie, he's another one of these. He's a massive kid, 6'4", 200 pounds. He can shoot the hell out of that puck, Bruce. And in the playoffs, so he had kind of an okay regular season for the Halifax Moosehead. 73 points in 62 games. But in the playoffs, Bruce, 20 goals in 23 games. Pretty sweet, and he fell to the Oilers at 38 in the draft. Another shooter. So this is, in terms of pure shooters, I'd say that they've got Leon Draisaitl, of course, James Neal now, and Maksimov and Lavoie bubbling up from below, but a ways away.
Right.
Lavoie is currently trying out for Team Canada to play on the World Junior team. So we saw him a little bit in the development camp. What did you make of him?
Yeah, he's another oldest end of his draft class. He just missed by a few days, just like Ryan McLeod last year. He just missed by a few days of being in the previous draft. But he... So he's only got 1 year more a junior, and he'll be turning pro in a year, almost for sure. But as you say, he's a huge guy. He does have a good shot. In development camp, I got a kind of a both sides view of the guy. Some moments very impressive, and sometimes where he just clearly lost the battle, got on the wrong side of the battle, or made in the scrimmage lazy play with the puck, didn't clear the zone properly. He had a couple of problems with that in that 3-on-3 drill where he had to come out of the zone clean with the puck, and he just sort of slacked off at the wrong moment and turned it over or didn't make the pass. So lots of rough edges, but I mean, what would you expect if the guy is a 20-goal playoff man who's 6'4", right-hand shot? He's not going to be perfect across the board. Obviously, there's going to be parts of his game that need to be developed. Presumably, more progress will be made this year, and then he'll get into the pro chain. As a second-round pick, he's not the sort of player who would be expected to immediately step into the NHL. And frankly, David, I think those days are done, except for the very, very elite guys. And hopefully we won't be having too many more top 10 draft choices either that will produce such players. So he too is a couple of years off. I wonder about the work ethic. I certainly don't wonder about the talent, because the talent is there, and if he applies the talent, he's a serious prospect.
Yeah, I heard him on TV talking about he's off McDonald's now. He's going to eat a better diet. So
well, that's an improved.
Get serious for these young guys. They get drafted, and that's when the work does begin. And some of them get serious and figure it out. So hopefully he's one of them. All right, we are moving on to Kailer Yamamoto, and this time about 2 years ago, oil country was sky high, absolutely over the moon, including myself, including probably yourself. I'm not going to speak for you though about Kailer Yamamoto, because he went into one of those World Junior showcase things and absolutely dazzled everybody. He was just fantastic. He looked like this rising star, like the new Denny Savard at best, maybe Jordan Eberle at worst. And that's what I've been counting on. That's what I've been hoping for, is a Jordan Eberle kind of winger out of him, because he scored at kind of a similar rate in a lot of ways to Eberle as a junior hockey player. And he's this similar pocket-sized player, a finesse player with a lot of skill, a very smart player. Maybe lacking a little bit in terms of being a shooter, like Eberle, more of a passer, although a clever enough, obviously a very clever offensive player. He's had 2 test runs in Edmonton. In some ways, he hasn't looked bad, except he hasn't produced anything. He hasn't been terrible, but he's got, what do we got, 26 games and 1 goal at the NHL level. That's not going to keep you. That's not what Jordan Eberle did when he came to the NHL.
Right.
He was good to go. He was more ready to go.
First game.
Of course, he was older than Yamamoto.
Yes.
Yeah, at least a year older than Yamamoto, because Yamamoto's another of these early birthdays. So he was. Yeah,
Yamamoto's September, second half of September. So again, like McLeod, like Lavoie, he had only 1 more year of junior. His draft pedigree at number 22 was identical to Jordan Eberle. Right wing from the Western Hockey League. There was reasons to make that comparison, and not least of which was the scoring prowess. I mean, he scored 99 points in his draft year. I believe he had the most points of any player in that draft.
That was more than Eberle scored too, right? Like Eberle was more of a point per game guy.
Eberle got to 106, but only after in his draft plus 2 year. So the Oilers, they brought him up for those 9 games right away in 2017.
They were so desperate.
Yeah, I think that was a mistake. Did send him back to Spokane. It took him a while to get his stuff together, but he wound up, 64 points in 40 games his last year in Spokane. And then last year again, Edmonton, they had such a hole in top 6 right wing that they were giving him and Puljujärvi, and they had them both up for several weeks, and then they sent both of them down on the same day. And that was all well and good until he got hurt. He banged up his wrist in Bakersfield, and that kind of messed up his season. I mean, he got 10 goals in 27 games, right? That's a 30-goal pace for 82 games
through the year.
And he never played in the playoffs at all.
Yeah, that was really disappointing. I was so looking forward to seeing him in the playoffs, because that's when I tune into Bakersfield, like the Oilers season's over.
Right.
So we can focus on Bakersfield. And he was injured, and that was a real disappointment, I'm sure, mostly for him, that he wasn't able to compete at that level, because we would have got a real sense of him and his game. Yeah, 10 goals in 27 games isn't bad for an AHL rookie. So he sounds like he's slotted for the AHL this year. And what we need to see from Kailer Yamamoto is top line, point of game performance from Yamamoto. That will be the signifier. And if we see that for 20 or 30 games, if he gets like 35 points in his first 30 games, I think that should be within reach. then we could say,
He's
oh
ready.
yeah, he'll be ready for the NHL, and we'll see him then. And the good news is, I think we won't see him until he does that.
Right.
We will first see that predicator of NHL success, which we've never seen historically for about a decade with Oilers players, especially the young first-round picks.
Well, he had, of his 10 goals, 6 were on the power play. So you could say, well, maybe he had a hot stick there, or maybe he's good on the power play. But, maybe those 10 goals is a little bit of a mirage. On the other hand, he was productive on the power play, and yet he's sporting a plus-minus of plus 12 in 27 games. Which is, obviously plus-minus is problematic, but
on a really good team.
If you're outscoring consistently, to get double digits plus in a third of a season, even on a good team, he was carrying his weight. He wasn't getting caved.
I'd love to see him healthy, and I'd love to see him, because what we saw 2 summers ago was a really exciting offensive hockey player. And
Yes.
he does have that in him.
He's got a real spark.
It takes, but he's got to get bigger, stronger. Like he's so small. But he does have to get a little bit bigger and stronger, because he plays a bit of a physical game. He uses his body, and so
All 153 pounds.
he's got to get a better base.
Yeah, I happened to be at that game last year. It was against the Bruins, where he scored his one goal.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It just pulled everybody out of our seats. It was a great headman pass from Adam Larson, of all people, and he burst wide around the defense and managed to beat Tuukka Rask far side, and very, very nice play. But that's the one goal in the NHL. Obviously, he's, as an offensive player, he needs to find a way to put the biscuit in the basket.
Tyler Benson, the last player on our list for today, Bruce. So he had a very checkered junior career. I remember when he was drafted, he was the first or the second player taken in the second round. So Bob Green apparently was up all night. He couldn't get to sleep because he was just hoping and praying to get Tyler Benson. That Benson would be there. I guess he must have been the second player taken, so someone else had a chance to take him with the 31st pick. And the Oilers got him at 32nd overall. Of course, famously, Alex DeBrincat was taken later, and everyone piles on the Oilers for that, of course. 37 or 38 teams, whatever it was, had a chance to take Alex DeBrincat, and they didn't do it until
Even Chicago had a chance to take him earlier and didn't. So
yeah. So I don't engage in that kind of analysis of drafts.
Well,
I don't do it because I think it's stupid. Unless you were the guy on that draft, unless you were that guy right at the time, and there were people, so fair enough. Unless you're that guy, but then let's remember the 10 other times when you were that guy saying, let's take Robbie Schremp or something like that, and you got it wrong. Fair enough. If you were that guy, though, you can bring up the Brinkhead. Anyway, Tyler Benson, Bruce, he had just a fantastic year at the AHL level last year. 66 points in 68 games. He stayed healthy. He had 7 points in 10 playoff games. He wasn't as good in the playoffs, but his underlying numbers that we tracked, his scoring chance numbers, were actually pretty good. They were the other than that top line of Malone, Gambardella, and Russell. He was the next best forward on the team. That's without his Cooper Marody for much of the time, and Josh Curry not playing very well. So Tyler Benson, he's got a couple, at least one elite NHL skill, and that's his vision on the ice. He can make a pass. He can really pass. Sure, and it just makes me think, wow, one day, maybe soon, with Draisaitl, for some reason I think Draisaitl more than McDavid, but maybe with McDavid, here's a winger who can keep up with them mentally and hit them with a pass and knows where to go. He's a good positional player. And his other really good skill is his board work. He's very, very strong on the boards. So 2 things to highly recommend this player with his strong production last year.
Those 2 things go together. You win a board battle and make a pass. All of a sudden, you got a scoring chance just like that. And
it's my image of him.
His ability to pass. What impressed me is the timing. Like, the lane will open up for a split second, and that's when the puck is going through it, perfectly weighted. Often, obviously not every pass is perfect, but the ones that connect are where almost he passes when you wouldn't expect, and that's how he beats a defenseman. is, that split-second opening and bang, and he'll see the guy that's breaking into the opening and put it on the tape where the guy is in position to do something with it. And that came through in the tune of 51 assists in 68 games as an AHL rookie, which is highly impressive.
Now, one of the things you'll hear, Bruce, is like, don't rush this guy to the NHL. And here's the...
They already didn't rush him.
They already didn't. This is the point. They got it right. Like, there's people, it's like we're going to go from one extreme to the next. What you have to realize about young attacking forwards who have top six potential is they don't, generally speaking, need a lot of time in the AHL. They need, a lot of them need a year. Yes, a lot of them need a year. No doubt about it. And a lot of them do exactly what Tyler Benson did in that year. They rip it up in the AHL. But then they don't need another year to rip it up in the AHL. He's already done it. Now, I'm not saying it's going to hurt him if he goes back to the AHL. I don't believe it. But I don't know how much it helps him.
Right.
He might go back there and get another, he might put up a point a game again or put up a little bit more than that. But he is ready for the NHL. If he's going to make it in the NHL, this is as good a time as any. He doesn't need any more. He's overripe. He's at least he's ripe.
I'd say he's ripe.
He's at least ripe. Yeah. And the Oilers have a crying need for attacking wingers. And there's all kinds of permutations and combinations because both Neil and Draisaitl, who are slotted in right now on the left side there, can play the other side, or Draisaitl can play center.
Yes.
So Benson has an opportunity to force his way onto the team. I think it's a real possibility that's going to happen in training camp, and it will make sense for that to happen because he can combine so well with players like McDavid and Draisaitl and Neil and Nugent Hopkins.
Yeah, well, he's a very bright prospect at this point in time. I do also take issue with the school of thought that any player on an entry-level contract, because they have freedom to send him down to the AHL without any waiver process, that they should just spend the second and even the third year down in the AHL. You look at any self-respecting NHL team, and even some of the ones that aren't that good, you're going to find 2, 3, 4 players on entry-level contracts who are, in many cases, outperforming because they're all getting paid under $1 million, at least their base salary, who are outperforming that. The last Oiler last season, last entry-level contract player who played a game for the Oilers was Josip Puljujärvi on February 15th, and they played the whole stretch drive of the season in garbage time, and they didn't have a single entry-level player even on the roster. They weren't ready. It was the right move for the situation that they had, but that should not ever be the norm, that you don't have young players. I mean, the youngest player, the Oilers only have 3 guys on the team who were born after 1994.
And that speaks to the poor draft record in Stu McGregor's final years, 2012, 2013, 2014. The inability to get a couple players that, and that's all you need, right?
So, I mean, the 3 guys they have born after 94 were Darnell Nurse, first-round pick in 2013.
Yeah.
Leon Draisaitl, first-round pick in 2014. Connor McDavid, first-round pick in 2015, all in the top 10 in the draft. And nothing else that's under 24 years of age on the entire NHL roster. It's just mind-boggling to me that it could have got to such an extent. So some of these guys have got to start coming up. And I think we're going to be talking about defensemen that also have that opportunity. But it's only normal and proper for guys in the Tyler Benson class to get their chance sometime during their second year. If he doesn't make it out of camp, there's still every chance we could see him by Christmas.
All right, let's leave it there, Bruce. Right. Thanks for talking today.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
And in the meantime and in between times, this has been another edition of the Cult of Hockey podcast.